Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl. I'm a recovery coach here at Capital Recovery Center. This is our coffee and conversation meeting for the day. The article I got here is Finding Freedom in Addiction Recovery. It goes to say freedom. For most people, it's the ability to live on their own terms, to wake up each morning and choose how to live, love, and grow. But for those walking the path of recovery, freedom takes on an even deeper meaning. Recovery isn't just about abstaining from substance, it's about reclaiming your life, your identity, and your joy. Whether you're in long term recovery, just starting your journey, or loving someone who is struggling with substance use, know this freedom is possible, and recovery is how we get there. I know that I heard a saying, how free do you want to be, right? And people told me not just from abstaining from drugs or alcohol, but like freedom from the guilt, the shame, the resentment, the fear, anxiety, depression. It goes a lot deeper than just the drugs and alcohol. And I had to learn that, 'cause sometimes we can think, as long as I don't use drugs and alcohol, I don't have a problem. And wrong, and I had to learn that the hard way. It took me many years to get where I'm at today. And this last time, man, like the drugs and alcohol, was the big factor, right? But I still have a problem, and that's, me, and I can hold on to the guilt, the shame, the fear, and the way I think, the way I behave, what I say, how I treat myself, and how I treat others. All that stuff has to be adjusted. I needed an attitude adjustment, right? And I had to change my thinking, and I had to change the behavior. Uh, not just picking up, but the way I was living. We say in recovery a lot, people, places, and things. I had to avoid people, places, and things this time, and I had to do something different. Most importantly, I had to change and grow, and move forward, and not result to back to using drugs and alcohol, because I've learned that too, that drugs and alcohol is just a temporary fix. Sometimes we think it's the solution, and when the drugs and alcohol goes away, these emotions and feelings that we deal with or try to run from, they are still there and they won't go away. But I can choose to deal with them without using. I have a better way to cope and manage my emotions and feelings. It says, what is living free in addiction recovery? Living free in recovery means more than just staying clean. It's about feeling present in your own life again. When we break the cycle of addiction, we release ourselves from the guilt, shame, and secrecy that addiction causes. It frees us to healing relationships, discover our purpose and passions, and rebuild our physical, emotional, and spiritual health. Each of these freedoms amount to a present and future we can walk confidently through, one we can be proud of. Living without being controlled by cravings, fear, or regret means finally being able to breathe and believe in yourself again. Because recovery isn't just about surviving addiction, it's about learning how to live again. For those early For those already in recovery, you know that freedom doesn't happen overnight. It's earned through every hard choice, every honest conversation, every urge resisted, every meeting attended, and every step forward after a setback. And it says, um, the rebuild our physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And that's what addiction put a big hole in my life, the physical and emotional and spiritual. And if I had to rebuild that, right, because I was a lot of times withdrawing, depending on what substance we use, we go through physical withdrawal. I was not eating correctly. I was not taking care of my physical, not showering, not eating, not sleeping right, not taking care of, not going to the doctors, not getting blood work done. My physical well-being was not on my radar. Emotional. I was emotionally damaged. You know, because my when we use drugs and alcohol, it can be a stimulant, right? And it can control our emotional state, and it can make me just out of whack, and I was just depressed, full of anxiety, sadness. It was always stuck in a negative emotional space in my life. I was never happy. I was never content. Um, I just didn't see the good. Like I was always stuck in the negative, all right, and I was always in a negative mind space, in a negative mindset of, I can't do this, I can't do that. Just emotionally beaten, and spiritually, we talk about spiritual condition. I didn't have a contact with a higher power. I didn't have faith. I didn't have hope. It was, I felt like I was lost and confused, and I was like desperate, and I was just physically, emotionally, and spiritually bankrupt. I just feel like I didn't have anything left. Um, so like I have in recovery, like I touch on that, like, I'm sleeping better, I'm eating better. I see a doctor, I get blood work done. So I take medications if needed, and emotionally, I'm, you know, emotionally stable. I can make good decisions today, not based off my emotions, feelings. Not perfect, I do get better, but like I can make rash decisions today. Like, I can really think things through, and don't think it's a crisis. I can like try to focus and instead of my mind racing, and it happens, it does happen, but like I can think straight and think clear today. And spiritually, like I have a constant contact with a higher power today, and I pray, and I try to stay spiritually centered on most days. It says living free in recovery is about actively choosing. It says number one, peace over chaos, purpose over numbness, relationships over isolation, growth over stagnation. Each day you stay in recovery is a decision to live fully, intentionally, and authentically. Recovery gives you the chance to rediscover your values, your voice, and your dreams. That's real freedom. It says protecting your freedom. Let's see what that is. It says addiction robbed you of time. Sure did. Robbed me of time, trust, health, and often a sense of self. But recovery is the process of taking it all back. If you're already walking the recovery path, this is your reminder. You're a living example of strength, courage, and grace. Every day you choose recovery, you inspire someone else to believe it's possible, right? And recovery, like we talk about being selfish, like we have to be selfish, right? And I had to focus on me, because if I don't focus on me and get myself better, nothing else is going to be good. So like if I'm not okay, I'm not okay with you. So like I had to focus on my physical, spiritual, and my emotional well-being, and and that looks like different for everybody. And we talk a lot here about multiple pathways of recovery. Because what works for me might not work for you, and that's okay. So I just picked up over time what does work for me, and it's all about navigating. And sometimes we hit dead ends, but like I don't give up. I just find better ways to get better. And things that work for me, going to meetings and having conscious contact from a higher power. I have trusted people and family members, and I have a solid foundation and a great network of people that I trust. And I have healthy relationships today. And like with me getting better, now I can help others, through their journey of recovery, and that's like where my purpose came into play. As before, I didn't think I had a purpose. I thought I was doomed to use drugs and alcohol and actually die from active addiction. And I didn't really think I was going to make it out of my 20s. And like, what made me stay on the recovery pathway at this time, because I went to treatment before, a few times, and I never stuck with it, right? I never followed through with aftercare. Like that's where, like, where the rubber met the road for me. Because like I always went to treatment, I always went to jail, always, was absent somewhat in some type of way of not using, not being active addiction, right? But never stayed on the path of recovery. And like this last time, I focused on when I got out of treatment, like going to meetings and having a sponsor and having a support group and having a network of people and having a foundation and people to lean on. I needed that. And I think that for the most part, I was isolated. I thought I was like the worst of the worst and nobody's like me. And I thought I never could get better. I was always, I'm my worst enemy and my worst critic. I always set myself up for failure. So I had to break that illusion. Like, um, why am I putting myself through this? Like, not just for the drugs and alcohol, but the way I think about myself, the way I treated myself, the things I told myself, the negative self-talk. I was my biggest barrier from, going through the process of recovery. I always, got a little bit of time, maybe 30, 60 days. And like, I always resorted back to using, and I just didn't follow through with aftercare. I didn't have no defense against the disease of addiction, until this last time I was really desperate. And, the isolation, and the broke, the recovery has given me the freedom from self. Like other people been through what I've been through and are doing and living a life behind their wildest dreams. Living just, a simple life. I'm truly grateful for just a simple life. And I couldn't ask for more. It says freedom from addiction starts with asking for help. Addiction doesn't ask permission. It isolates, and convinces people that they're not worthy of love, support, of change. But here's the truth: addiction is a disease, not a choice or a moral failing. And just like any other disease, it requires medical management, clinical care, compassion, and consistent support. If you're someone you love is struggling with alcohol or drug addiction, the most powerful step you can take is to reach out. Asking for help is not a weakness. It's the first boldest step toward freedom, not the big one. I asked for help, but I always asked the hell to help me. I became my own help. Like I became my own doctor. I became my own therapist. I became my own prescriber. You get the point. Like I was very self-righteous, self-willed, and I tried to do things on my own for many, many years, right? And that's what got me in a lot of trouble, right? Until I asked for help, and I let the help me, right? And I listened, and people that's been through what I've been through and is staying clean day at a time, they gave me suggestions and they gave me guidance, and I was willing to listen. And I like actually took in what they were suggesting to me and applying it to my life, taking action, right? I was listening, and actually processing it and then applying it in my life, and like my life started to get better. I started to see that I started to physically feel better. Mentally, I started to clear up, and spiritually, I start to have some kind of freedom and not locked and loaded with the drugs and alcohol, because that just destroyed my life, for many, many years. And I'm just grateful that I can experience the freedom I do have today, but it takes work. It definitely takes work, and it takes a lot of action, because self-advocacy, speaking up for myself and actually doing some work, like I can't just put the drugs and alcohol down and think that things are going to be okay and that I'm going to start to change and grow. Recovery is about action. It's about taking that step forward and actually working on myself. And I started to get better. So I just kept on with it, day at a time, little by little. I started to gain things back, the gifts of recovery that we talk about, and things I never had before. Like came in here lost, desperate, lost, confused, didn't know from left to right, didn't have anything, right? Until, I started to really apply what was given to me. And I started to, gain some things in life. And I just wanted more of it. So I just continue to, uh, do the right thing for the right reason. It says, if you or someone you love is struggling with alcohol or drug, we just talked about that. We know how scary that first call can feel, but we also know what waits on the other side: healing, hope, and a life you'll be proud to live. Whether you're just starting out, supporting a loved one, or celebrating years of sobriety, you deserve a life of purpose, peace, and freedom. Man, purpose, peace, and freedom. Man, that sounds good, don't it? And I have that today. I truly can say that I have purpose today, and that's about helping others. Not helping others, not expecting anything in return. Actually genuinely caring about somebody and helping them, try to pull them out of the pits of disease of addiction, right? And just you know sit alongside of them and try to guide them in the right direction. You know, and find their pathway. And peace, I have a peace of mind. I don't have to worry today, right? I don't have to look over my shoulder and always thinking that the law is after me. I can generally say, like, I don't have no worries today. Doesn't mean that I don't worry or I can overwhelm myself. That's not realistic, right? But I have some peace and contentment with me today. And the freedom that I experience here, first and foremost, is from active addiction, right? But I don't have to continue to live in my self-made prisons, right? I can stay locked and loaded in here, and I know for me today, like, I don't need drugs and alcohol to destroy my life. I can do that without it, right? So I know I have to continue this journey of recovery, and one day at a time, and not use and continue to do the right thing for the right reason, and follow my purpose. We can do great things in life. So that was our coffee and conversation for the day: finding freedom in addiction recovery. My name is Quell, recovery coach at Cap Recovery Center. Until next time, we'll see you later.